Welcome to Podcast Done For You, the show where we make it as easy as possible for you to make the right choices to advance your podcasting career. So let's get started on the show.
Transforming internal communications and enhancing employee engagement. That is the topic that we've been challenged to talk about today for very, very good reason. It is often underestimated how valuable a podcast can be internally within an organization. We focus so much on the value of it being an external exercise, and we've covered that in plenty of episodes, but this time we want to talk about it internally. So if you are the chief of staff or an internal communications manager, this is an episode that is just for you. Now, one of the things that is really underestimated in the value of a podcast is its ability to really engage audiences internally. Now, we talk about in an external podcast how it can be valuable to existing clients in much the same way an internal podcast is valuable to internal employees. Now, I'm really talking about organizations that probably employ 100 plus people. And sometimes those people can be quite scattered. They're not necessarily all located physically in one place, or they're not necessarily at this day and age physically in the office all at the same time. Now, we've talked to organizations about this all over the world, and sometimes they are split globally. So an internal communications strategy that is centered around podcasting can be of massive value, because the reality is we don't get an opportunity if you're working in a large organization to get to know many of the other team members. Yes, you do get bits and pieces of communication along the way, but that is something different to being able to sit down and have a conversation with people, find out what makes them tick, find out what they're working on, find out where things are going, get their view, get their stories, get their insights, get to know them a little bit better so you feel like you are more part of the team. Now, of course, an internal podcast can be used to launch new things that are happening within a business. But it's not just about that. It shouldn't just be about those people at the highest level. It should be about people at all levels of a business. An opportunity to share in some valuable stories. Now, why are stories so important to a business, particularly internally? Well, let me tell you, they are massively important because it's what happens at all different levels of an organization that is absolutely worth sharing, and having a definite place to be able to share them is really important because, for example, you might have someone that may just be a worker in a certain production area of a business, and he may not ever have any opportunity to sit down with a manager who may be located physically in another part of the world, for example. But his stories are no less valuable. It might be things that are happening to him, things that he's discovered, things about his background. It could be all sorts of different areas that add some value to him as an expert within the business. Now, that doesn't mean he's trying to run the company, trying to be the manager, trying to take over, or do any of those kinds of things. It's about sharing valuable stories that make a difference. And sometimes those stories don't relate directly to the business itself. It could be about things that express the kind of values that the person has. And again, that applies to whether you are down the chain or high up in the chain in a business. Understanding what makes a person tick can be really valuable to being able to understand if you have some shared values, and to understand that there are opportunities to engage on different levels. At the end of the day, human to human contact is about understanding each other's stories and deciding whether we relate to that person or not. And given the opportunity to be able to do that across a medium like podcasting is incredibly important. So there is that simple factor of relationship building without actually having a conversation with every single person directly, because quite frankly, in most organizations, that's virtually impossible to do. So beyond relationship building and understanding of individuals, there are some other important key elements to the value of an internal podcast. Now, it is about stories that are being captured for a different reason. The truth is, any business has a turnover of staff. And that can happen for any number of valid reasons. And it can also be about new staff coming in because the business is expanding. So how then do you share your stories with those new people to understand what the history of the business is? Well, podcasting is the ideal platform for that. Because if you're coming in, and let's just take sales as an easy example of this, if you're coming in and you're starting to work in a sales department, you don't know the history of what's happened in the past, of the positives, perhaps even some of the negatives and the pitfalls to avoid. You don't know what the business has done to the same degree, how they've responded in certain situations. Well, a podcast which enables you to share some of those stories is absolutely a valuable asset to have. Indeed, it's a valuable asset to have as well for a business that ever wants to be sold. And that's another side point, but an important one as well, because you are capturing all of this valuable IP in a different way. Stories are incredibly powerful and they are important to be able to share. Now, I would hasten to add that one of the things that I've seen fail in a podcast is when you don't have someone facilitating all of this. So it is one of the things that I want to come to in a moment about what makes podcasts fail internally and how you can overcome them. So let's just get back to one of the other key features of why an internal podcast is so incredibly important to an organization. Because once you build relationships, once you share stories, making it possible to relate changes that are happening within the business is that much easier because you've built a level of trust and understanding in where we're going. It's also an avenue of which you are, generally speaking, able to communicate in a different way what is happening within a business, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it might be, the strategic, the not strategic. It's important to understand where a business is going and the over-prepared webinar style events or the very written down, deliberate communication. Whilst that is important, it's a whole different thing when you're hearing it from the people in charge and the people who are running it and what their vision might be, because it's less about the documented strategy, but more about the gut feel of where it's going, where it came from, why it's going to exist, where they see an opportunity. It's also an opportunity as well to potentially answer some questions. Much like today, the reason that I'm doing this particular podcast is because I've had a number of people asking me about the value of internal podcasts and why they don't work in some places and why they do work in others and how to get them working. There's probably more to the point. That's come from people who have given us feedback along the way, and we appreciate that, and please keep that rolling in. We're always open to recording new shows to give you some more value. But that's the important thing for you as well. If you're running an internal podcast, it's to be able to get some feedback from people and to look at those new avenues. So there we are. That's 4 very good reasons why you should have an internal podcast. Now, one of the other reasons why you should have an internal podcast is not only is it a great asset for your business, not isn't a great learning curve, but it's a way of creating some consistency in the way communication is delivered in a easy to consume format. As simple as that. The fact is, when we get emails, we don't often read them. We don't want to read those sorts of things out of hours. We don't want things written down. Attending a webinar can sometimes be distracting and it's not that engaging. It's not always possible to go to lunch or to those things. You can miss them. The great thing about a podcast is it is there for you 24/7. You can listen to it when and where you want to. So you can be going out for a coffee. You can go for a walk. You can be doing it before or after work, on your way, wherever you choose to listen. It's an opportunity to engage. And again, you can have them as video, you can have them as audio only, whatever you choose to do. It is that really important way of breaking down those boundaries and making it accessible in a easy to consume format that is available to people 24/7 so that they can feel as though they can be in touch with what's going on when and where they feel like it. So 5 very good reasons why you should have an internal podcast. Now, let me just say to you, the reason why podcasts internally fail has a lot to do with the production of them. I hear this all the time. Oh, we're going to do it internally. Someone has some skills somewhere and they're going to do some interviews. We've heard people that, oh, we can do the production ourselves. All of these things usually add up to absolute failure. Now, part of the reason why as well is that you want to be able to record from people anywhere and everywhere. The whole nature of this kind of exercise is usually that not everybody is located together. So having a studio for people to come to is usually not practical. Therefore, the equipment can be problematic. The second and most important part of all of this is if you think you can be independent by being internally an internal employee, then that is mistake number one. That is usually the reason why most of these podcasts fail. Is first of all, is that person actually really qualified to be able to lead a conversation with people in your business? Number two, is that person actually independent? I would challenge that they're not. Therefore, their ability to be able to ask questions, whether they be, high level kind of questions that are more strategic, or whether they're just more basic questions, you need to represent everybody within the organization, and you can't do that if you're actually employed within the organization. So I would strongly encourage anyone that is thinking about an internal communication podcast to absolutely contact someone such as myself, because we can host it. I can host it for you. And so it remains independent. It gives you that flexibility to be able to ask questions, to be able to lead conversations for those that may know lots, those that may know very little. It's a chance to be engaging on a different level, to be led by something that is professional, and don't underestimate that value. When you invest properly in internal communications, it can make a huge difference. Just that perception of adding that level of professionalism to it is huge. I often cast my mind back to some years ago when I was working internally within a larger organization, and we did a corporate video. Very common to do corporate videos, and more so was the commonality. And again, corporate videos are probably a little bit fewer and far between these days because they use things like podcasting instead. But what was very common was to bring in an external professional host. I certainly remember doing that myself within an organization. It's because that level of independent professionalism adds so much value to the perception of everybody going on. It also means that you up the quality level. I would say to you as well, production-wise, don't do it internally. Unless you particularly are a business that's set upon editing video and audio on a day-to-day basis, why would you do it? You're taking away people from what they would normally be doing. You're not going to achieve the same level of professionalism that you can by doing it externally. Don't do it. If you should have the budget for doing this. I believe that if you have 100 plus employees, then a podcast is something that will add huge amount of value to your business. And I would encourage you absolutely to contact a business like mine, podcastdoneforyou.com.au. We can get it all done for you. So all you have to do is give us the list of who you want to be on the program, what we're going to talk about, and the rest gets done for you. We do that for a number of organizations at the moment, and it's something that increasingly is in demand. So that's perhaps the reason why I've been asked the question, is because people know that I have been doing it and they've been trying to understand why it hasn't worked for them. Well, I'm telling you, they are the main reasons. There are lots of other reasons why they may not work, but I'm telling you the big two has to do with production and independent co-host. They are the two biggies. So if you are looking to really increase the engagement with your employees, if you are looking for better communication strategies, then I would highly encourage you to really think seriously about the value of having an internal podcast for your organization. It doesn't have to be a big commitment either. Don't make the mistake of thinking that it has to be a 30-minute every week kind of deal. I would encourage most of the internal podcasts to be 15 to 20 minutes maximum, even in that 10 to 15 mark. I would only put them out every 2 weeks. Give people something to look forward to. There are many, many team members I bet that you can talk to and have as part of the podcast personalities telling lots of stories, lots of good things to share with a very, very engrossed audience. And the measuring the ROI, well, that's a whole different story that we can get down to in another time. But I would say to you this, that the ROI measurement on this is purely about people wanting to be on the show and wanting to listen to the show. You can do lots of things to encourage people to either, create competitions and things, or ask for feedback and ask for people to put their hand up to be on the show, volunteer other people to be on the show. There are lots of ways to encourage the engagement. And by encouraging the engagement with the actual platform, you're encouraging engagement within the organization. You're encouraging people to build those relationships, build trust, really understand the values that the organization has across the board, get to know people you wouldn't otherwise get to know, and all in all, make the organization function a hell of a lot better, from the CEO right down to the person at the bottom of the chain. It's an opportunity for everyone to be on an equal footing and to add value to every aspect of the business by just sharing the value that you bring in whatever role you are in. So there you go, a whole bunch of reasons why an internal podcast is such a major asset for your business. If you want more information about how to get an internal podcast up and running, please reach out to me using the show notes. There are plenty of links in there. Jump on the website, podcastdoneforyou.com.au, and book yourself an appointment. Let's have a chat. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Any of those opportunities are there for you. And of course, if you've got other things you want us to talk about in future episodes of the podcast, please do jump online and let us know. Again, reach out to me directly. Happy to do what we can to fill that in future episodes. So please, it'd be remiss of me not to remind you, do subscribe, do like, do comment, do share. We love all of that, because the more people we have listening, the more value that we can add to everyone. We hope this little bit of brilliance has been of some value to you. Until next time on the podcast Done For You, the show, I'm Anthony Pearl. We'll see you next time.